I'm Crispy, and today's topic, amends. Now, I'm going to discuss a little bit about why it's important to make amends and some tips on how to make amends. This isn't the full Celebrate Recovery lesson or a full lesson. It's just kind of like a basic primer or overview, kind of off the cuff a little bit. But the main goal of this video, the thing that I'm really sharing, is the three times that I made amends and or tried to make amends and how they turned out and maybe what I learned from that and maybe it can benefit someone else. So it's more personal testimonial, but I am going to briefly discuss. So making amends is a celebrate recovery principle, and I'm not going to do the celebrate recovery lesson in this video. I mean, your local CRs does that at some point in the year. You can join them to see that. I may do it at some point here. I may do some of them here, but that's not what we're doing today, and the video will be longer. So, but it is a basic, part of the celebrate recovery process. However, I learned about this and the importance of this before I learned about celebrate recovery in a small group with the person who's now my pastor. He was a small group leader at the time, and he placed a great importance on amends as part of the part of Christian living and part of that working toward being more like Christ. So kind of the now I didn't prepare because I just kind of wanted to share these three things, because again I don't want this to be a huge long video and me keep explaining that's making it longer. So, you know, so I wanted to share the experiences just as a little bit of background. So I didn't prepare a like rock solid biblical case, which I know I could do given time, but that I'm just doing this kind of off the cuff. But I did find one verse, I did do a little bit of background that kind of shows the importance of making amends. Now, first of all, making amends is the idea of making right what I did wrong or what we did wrong. That's what amends is. Making amends is I did this wrong or we had this issue. Here's my contribution. I want to make it right. And sometimes it can be on both ends. Amends isn't like going up to somebody, grabbing them by the shirt collar and saying, you need to fix what you broke. I mean, that's not amends. But I mean, it can be mutual, but usually it's kind of more centered on, I did something wrong. I need to go and apologize. Although again, it could be mutual, I guess. I mean, in CR terms, it's, I did this thing wrong and I'm going to go and fix it. And we fix it not partially to kind of cover the past, partially maybe to minimize, because we're making amends, and that means that we're fixing what we did. So we're repairing the harm that we did, just like Zacchaeus, the tax collector, said, if I ripped anybody off, I'll pay him 10 times as much. That's an example of making amends and, trying to make right what was once wrong. And there's other examples in the Bible I'm sure I could find if I did a study, but again, that's not what we're doing. So Matthew 5:23-24 is kind of the money verse for this. So if you're offering a gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. So, um, that says it. That the importance of reconciliation, the importance of if there's beef, to confront it. And I think oftentimes we, as humans, we try to. I've tried to. I mean, I'm guilty of this. Kind of just avoid things, and sometimes some situations, it's kind of best to just kind of let it go because, you know, nothing bad happened. Only happened good or whatever. I mean, only happened bad. Not good can happen. Only bad or something. I mean, sometimes it's just nothing good can come of this. So it's important to have that skill to kind of point that out. But there's also the idea of cowardice. The idea that that we're just being chicken. Bark, 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 bark. I mean, I'm guilty of that. So so there is, but there are legitimate times where there's reasons why you would not want to make amends. So just a few points. I mean, first, it's the more direct, the better. And also, prepare. I mean, CR recommends making a list and then kind of saying this is how I'm going of all the people I've wronged, and then figure out how to make amends to them all, how to kind of fix it. In person is usually better. 2 out of the 3 of my examples weren't in person. I'm not. I may have not. I mean, one of them couldn't be in person because of just geographic limitations. One of them could have been in person, but I didn't, and I don't remember enough to say whether I was just being a bark, 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 or if there was a legitimate reason why, and it could have gone either way. I mean, it was a busy person, so maybe it was just easy. It maybe it may have been the right decision. I don't know, but that I did what I did. It's been about 15 years that I went through this process, so and maybe a few people I need to go through this process again with. So anyway, so it's important again, and it's not just saying "oops, sorry about that, bud," but it's also the idea of trying to make it right, and oftentimes the confession and the assumption of responsibility is a big part of making it right, because you're showing the other person you weren't wrong, I was wrong, and oftentimes that may be the thing that needs to happen, but there may be other things that needs to happen as well, and so other ways to make the thing right. So, and there's been a lot of things I've done wrong with this in my life, obviously. I mean, and I think most of us listening would kind of have the same sort of testimony. Maybe not everybody. Maybe you've been an awesome person most of your life. I mean, everybody's fallen short of the glory of God, but maybe you've fallen short much less than I have. So, anyway, I think the important thing is, to do so as long as it's safe for both parties. I mean, if I had was abusive, and then I was gonna go, I'd have to be careful. The person I abused would feel safe around me. I can't just go up to them when they're kind of have some trauma or might have some trauma and say, hey, about all that abuse, I'm really sorry about, because that may scare them, and again, that causes harm, or vice versa. It may be a person who isn't safe for me to be around, but I still did something wrong. I still need to make amends. So we have to consider that. Also, as a general point, before I get into my examples, it's probably never a good idea to go up to somebody and tell them that you forgive them unless they know you were having something against them. I think that probably causes more damage. Just because I forgive you. I didn't know I did anything wrong. That kind of happened in one of my amends, even though I didn't put it like that. But so anyway, here are the three examples. Okay, so I have to give the background story to the best of my remembrance. Again, this has been 10, 15 years ago that I went through this process. I still think it's useful. And then, the what I did, and then the response. And I don't remember all the details. And honestly, the details don't really match, just the general situations. So the first one was I was working with a youth pastor. I was a youth leader at a church. One of the youth leaders, I'm not even a high up one, just one of. I was working. They had one youth pastor, they had another, so that second youth pastor kind of inherited me, as part of the staff, and he, so he was getting his feet wet in this, and so as we were going on, there were a couple things that happened that didn't set right with me, and I'm not gonna say the other. I mean, I don't remember exactly what they were. I mean, there are some things where maybe I felt he was inaccessible or kind of insensitive, or I was being a little whiny person. I won't use. I'm a Christian. I can't use the word I was going to use. But anyway, I take most of that responsibility. I was kind of just being a little bit of a putz. But I mean, that's not. I mean, to be perfectly honest, there may have been things he could have done better. I don't. I know I was wrong. But what happened? This happened. I didn't really express. I just kind of went along with it. Eventually, goes, forget this. I don't want to do this anymore. So I just said, I'm done. I actually gave 2 weeks notice. And said in 2 weeks I'm done with I'm going to resign. I need to move on. I wasn't a nasty. That was just kind of very matter of factly, I believe. But I told him I'm not going to do this anymore. And so I was harboring that for a long time, that kind of bitterness for a while. Fast forward maybe years, and I'm hearing this thing about amends, and I'm thinking about it. I'm going, you know what? I was a whiny little jerk. I mean, I really was. I was wrong. And that doesn't illegitimize all my feelings. There's a space for somebody said some things that were insensitive, and I'm being a whiny little jerk about it. Those things can coexist, because not people aren't perfect, and I need to be the bigger person. And I'm not saying that in terms of that they're wrong, but I mean, I'm sure I do plenty of things to offend others that I don't know about, or that I do, and can't, and just careless. So I have to own that other people are going to do that, and I have to, if it gets bad enough, I should just tell them flat out and have a conversation if it gets bad enough. But I mean, there is some. I mean, I don't think we have to say every time we're offended, we have to say, oh, I was offended, you offended me, and let's process this. People don't have time for that. A lot of that stuff can be handled in-house and should be, in my opinion. But anyway, so that little rant aside, and for some reason, this is the one I was talking about where I don't know if I should have went in person or wrote it, but I wrote a Facebook message, a direct message to him, and I just told him. So like there were some things, and I had more detail at the time. I don't quite remember. This happened, and I reacted really badly, and I had bitterness against you for a while because of this sort of thing. But I realized that I overreacted. I took most of the responsibility. I think I took the responsibility, and I said, I'm sorry. I need to make amends. I need to say, and this is where I'm kind of saying I'm forgiving him, even though I kind of put it on me because it belonged on me. So this is where, I kind of like, because it took him, because he wrote back, because I didn't have any idea. I'm just really devoted to the mission. And that's the thing that's kind of universal about youth pastors I've found. I mean, maybe not all of them, but I've found with the youth pastors that I've worked with that they are very dedicated to the mission. So a lot of things become secondary. And over the years, I've learned that that's okay. That when I'm working with a youth pastor or in any sort of situation, the objective is what's important, not my own personal feelings. Yes, a leader should be kind of sensitive to the people working under them, or people working with them, and understand that they have things beyond this, but they don't. I mean, they're dedicated. This is the thing that they do, and they expect, rightfully, that everybody has the same passion. That doesn't mean that passion can always be 100% directed toward the goal. I mean, sometimes people have lives beyond that. That's true, and a leader needs to be sensitive to that. But that's the way they're going to feel, and that's kind of what he told me. He said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't realize I did it." I ended up working with him for a while again. It was like another year. We came back. I worked with him, worked with the youth. It was good. I did my best. I eventually decided again that it just wasn't the time for me to do that. But the next time I just walked in his office. I said, there's nothing. This time I was clear. It's like, there's nothing bad. I just need, it's just, I feel like this is a time for me to move on, but there's no hard feeling. And there wasn't. And he accepted that, and we were fine. And even if I see him today, we'll talk, and we're fine. And that was on me, and I needed to acknowledge that, and I did. And that's the first. That's probably the best example of amends. The second example is kind of a quirky one, and it's not something I actually did, but it's something I was involuntarily involved in. It wasn't my choice to be involved in it, but I just was. And so anyway, so for a while I was going to this church. It was a little bit of a hike. And I was mostly going for their drama team, although and I wasn't attending church as consistently as I could then. And part of it's because this church was like about 40 minutes away from my house. But I was going there because I was part of the drama team. A bunch of us. We had a drama team at our former church called Shelby United Methodist, which I went to a reunion with fairly recently. It's been a couple months now, but fairly recently. So a few of us are running it back, and they called me, and I'm like, yeah, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. I still want to do that. I still need to do that. I'm not active enough. I want to take acting lessons. I just need to do it. But anyway, so we did it for a while. We did a couple performances. Everything was going good. But there was a dispute between the pastor and the drama director. I think he was the drama director. I know who it is. I just don't know exactly what. I'm pretty sure he was the one directing the drama. Because there's another person that could have been. I think he was the youth pastor. And he was also working. It was also another Trilby alumni. So we're all there, and they got in a debate over social media. I mean, the pastor told my friend and the drama director that he needed to get rid of his social media account. Pastor's ahead of the curve there, I think. But I was not involved in this dispute. I was not aware of what happened. I think there was an offensive post or something people heard about. It'd be better if I told this story like 12 years ago when I remembered more of the details, but I don't. So anyway, but they left. Like all the Trilby people left, all en masse. And I left with them. I didn't leave because I didn't have a bone in the fight. I wasn't mad at the pastor. I was like, I was kind of like, I don't know who's right or wrong. Just because the person's my friend doesn't mean they're right. But I left because I didn't know anybody, and it's like 40 minutes away. It just didn't make sense for me to go there anymore if I didn't know anybody, and it's a 40-minute drive every week. So I left. But I never said anything just because there was really no mechanism for me to really say anything. I didn't have his email. I didn't, I just stopped going. I mean, but I probably could have gone one more time, enjoyed the service, and explained that I'm not part of the walkout. It's just I don't know anybody anymore, and that weighed on me. And I'm like, and I know I didn't do anything wrong, but I also know the way it could have been taken. So I took a chance. It was on my way somewhere. I don't, because the timing, I don't really remember why I was going where I was going, but I was going past that church. I'm like, I'm just going to stop in and tell him. It's during the amends process, so I did, and he was home. I mean, he was at work actually, but he was there, and so I said, "Oh, hey, Pastor Joe, I just want to remember." He remembered me, and I talked, and and I walked into his office. I said, "Look, I mean, I know there's some things that went on, and I only left because I explained to him, the same thing. It's kind of like in the Bible, they have to retell the story. I don't really, I explained to him what I just said. I didn't have anything against you. It's just all my friends left, and it's like I didn't know anybody except you, and so it was never about you. I wasn't part of that. That's why I really wanted. That's what I really want to know is I wasn't part of the walkout. It's just that there was nobody there, and he received it exceedingly well. And he talked about lunch at some point, but it just didn't go to fruition because maybe I could have. It just didn't really work out. And but the main objective was done, and maybe he was also being kind of polite, like, yeah, maybe we can have lunch sometime. I mean, I don't, because I really wasn't planning to go back, because but I just wanted him to know that I wasn't part of that. And again, was I wrong to just kind of leave? No, probably not. I mean, and I think he might have been able to figure it out, because I think most of the people, yeah, but it was important for him to know that I wasn't a part of that. So that's the second example of amends. And again, we had a great conversation. We talked about some things. I understand his perspective, although that really wasn't the point, because it wasn't my debate to be involved in. Again, I just left because I didn't know anybody. That's all it was. So anyway, and then he understood that, and I just feel good about that. Because I just felt I needed to do that. And the third example of amends, it's a little bit embarrassing, maybe not really embarrassing. So anyway, I was attending a small group. Actually, it's kind of a series of small groups with the same small group leader who talked about amends. But anyway, and there was a young lady at that group, and I was attracted to her, but I was a coward. I mean, I didn't just ask her out, and honestly, it probably wouldn't have worked because I lacked confidence, and I was much bigger than I am now. And just real quickly, I don't. Being big or not being conventionally attractive isn't necessarily something that I feel I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I feel that, like in a 50-yard dash, I start 10 yards further back. I mean, I think it's a disadvantage. I think it can be overcome, but I think it's a disadvantage. And I don't know, even if today, I think I'm better off than I was then, but I don't know if I could, I still don't know if I could make that up. I still don't know if I have enough to offer to make up for that disadvantage. And even now, but back then, definitely. And and I lacked confidence. Partially, I mean, they kind of were, they kind of, I mean, I lacked confidence because I was kind of really big. I mean, really big. So anyway, so eventually she starts going out with somebody who I was friends with. I would think I made my friends afterwards, only because he kind of debuted in the group and then immediately started going out with her. So I don't think I befriended him because he was dating her. I think it's just kind of something that happened going, kind of at the same time. And so what's the problem with that is that he would tell me about his relationship, and I was still attracted to her and hoping she would go out with me at some point. But yet I was giving him advice on what to do about his relationship. Now, honestly, maybe to his detriment, but I was honestly giving him the best advice I knew how. I was not trying to sabotage his relationship. Maybe if I was, maybe it would have been better for him. Maybe I could have, maybe I suck at giving relationship advice. And I don't even remember what the advice was. I remember, but he would talk to me about it. We would process through ideas. I was being sincere, but I still owed it to him I should have let him know that I had a conflict of interest. That I was kind of, I wasn't I wasn't hoping his relationship would fail. I was hoping she would decide not to be in that relationship. It's the same thing, but it's a different attitude. It wasn't that I didn't wish anything bad on him. Ideally, what would have happened is he would have found somebody else that he was happier with, and then I could have been free to kind of pursue. That's would have been best because I actually did like the guy. I mean, I didn't have anything against him, and I wasn't going to take his go or work any subterfuge, but still, I was compromised, and I felt it was wrong for me not to disclose that. You know, and you can understand why I didn't disclose it. Probably partially the same reason why I didn't ask the girl out in the first place, lady, excuse me. Yeah. So anyway, so again, after years, we'd been separated. He was living in Washington, so there was no way for personal contact. So I just wrote him a note, pretty much saying, "Look, dude, I'm sorry." I basically told him what I just said. You know, I was attracted to your girlfriend. I gave you advice. I basically said that. Never got a response. Have no idea how he took it or if he even read it. It might have been read. It might have been said it was read. Don't know how he took it. I know that we had a couple interactions on social media, so he didn't hate me or anything. So I guess that's okay. He never really talked about it. He was with somebody else and perfectly happy to be so. So it ended up great for him. He probably ended up in a better position than he would have been if the other thing worked out, which often happens in these sort of relationships. You try, you find out maybe that's not the connection. It's not a reflection on either person, it just is. And then you find somebody that's more suited for you, which I think is what happened in his case, which is great. But that doesn't minimize the fact that I could have been more forthcoming about my intentions or just had gone through the process and said, you know what, my friend's dating her and I'm going to be a loyal friend and I'm not going to think about this, which is really hard, but maybe that's the other thing I could have done. So now what have we learned here today is that amends aren't always going to go well. They did in my case, but it could have went sideways. The last person could have been like, well, screw you, jerk. The pastor could have not met with me or just been kind of cold. The youth leader could have said, I'm not gonna have you back. You left the work. He's gonna be like Paul and John Mark. No, you left. You don't get to come back. What's wrong with you? I mean, it could have gone sideways, and amends sometimes do go sideways. But remember, one of the things is amends are for us and for our relationship with God primarily. They're also for the other person by extension, and it's a very important extension. It's a very important extension because we are trying to repair the damage. If I did something to somebody, I need to fix the thing that I did to the best of my ability. Because, because I've called to by God to do that, but also because it's best for the other person. Just the basic idea of empathy. I broke it, I fix it. Period. But it's not always gonna go the way we want. And like all three of them, they went well, but you could also see they went. One of them kind of didn't go particularly well. I was blessed that my experiences are mostly positive. I mean, they could be negative in a lot of ways. So to review, when we make amends, we're doing it for our relationship with God, for our relationship with others, but also for us. And it's on us. And if it's not accepted by the other person, that's okay. We tried. We have to make sure it's safe for us and for them. Actually, for them first, then for us. And sometimes it's not possible to make amends in terms of direct. Sometimes the person who you've wronged has died, in which case celebrate recovery. And I think others would kind of say, maybe through that process, okay, how can you right the wrong in other places? How can you kind of do something that maybe you wouldn't ordinarily do to contribute in other ways to kind of make up for the harm you did that you can no longer make up for directly? And that's something valid too. So anyway, that is amends. Again, it wasn't a conventional lesson. It was just my own personal experience with it. But really, the thing, I think the takeaway here is it's just always important to communicate. And I know I'm not great at this. I need to work on this. And sometimes it is necessary to say, what, is this really something I need to burden the other person with, or is it something I can handle in-house? But there are times when it can't be or shouldn't be handled in-house, and we need to communicate. We need to be direct. We need to, and when a situation comes up where we need to confront it, let's confront it head on. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. Let's not get to that point. I should have confronted the youth pastor and explained my concerns, even if I was wrong, and then we could have hashed it out. Then maybe I would have learned sooner I was wrong, or I should have like gone to the church one more time and said, I don't really know anybody anymore, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be back, but no hard feelings. I'm not part of the walkout. Shake hands, and maybe with the other guy, maybe I should have said flat out, yeah, look, I like her, but I support your relationship, which I did. So just keep that in mind when you're asking me. I'm telling you, as a person of my word that doesn't want to dishonor myself, that if I tell you something, it's the best thing. I'm thinking it's the best. So I could have handled those head on, and then we wouldn't have had what we had, you know. And I should have done that, but I did it in retrospect, and I think it's probably time for me to kind of go through another amends process and see maybe who I need to make amends with. And again, it's kind of hard because again, you want to balance, So anyway, I think this is one I'm going to keep, even though it's not great, but it's personal experience, and it's probably not going to get better than that. So anyway, have a great day, and remember, just confront things head on when necessary, so you can avoid years of unpleasantness. You know, make those amends early. You don't have to, and you don't. It doesn't keep damaging you later or me later. Bye.